INFJs don't just disappear out of nowhere. When they vanish from your life without warning, it's not random, it's intentional. To most people, this feels confusing, even hurtful, but for an INFJ, disappearing is often the final act of self-preservation. They've likely endured silence, swallowed resentment, and given endless chances before they reach this point. And when they do, they're gone for good. In this video, we'll uncover the hidden reasons why INFJs suddenly disappear without explanation and why their silence speaks louder than any confrontation ever could. If you want to truly understand the psychology of INFJs and avoid making mistakes that push them away, stay with me until the end. But before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to Brainy One and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next deep dive into INFJ psychology and hidden truths. Silent observers before action. One of the most misunderstood traits of INFJs is their silence. Many people assume that when an INFJ is quiet, they're simply being passive or avoiding conflict. But in reality, their silence is anything but empty. Behind those still moments, their mind is in overdrive, watching, analyzing, and piecing together patterns that most people overlook. INFJs are natural observers. They notice not just what you say, but how you say it. A slight change in tone, a hesitation before answering, or even the way your body shifts during a conversation can all register in their subconscious. Over time, these little cues begin to form a bigger picture, and long before they act, they've already seen enough to understand what's really going on. This is why people are often shocked when an INFJ suddenly disappears. Because while others are living on the surface, INFJs have already been tracking deeper patterns of behavior that most don't even realize they're showing. Their ability to observe silently is also a form of self-protection. Instead of reacting to every slight, every inconsistency, or every betrayal, they store it away, layering insight upon insight. They're not looking for a single moment to judge you on, they're waiting to see consistency. When that consistency proves toxic, manipulative, or simply incompatible with their values, that's when the decision is made. But by the time they take action, the choice has already been settled in their mind. This is why their disappearance feels so sudden to others. It's not actually sudden at all. It's the result of weeks, months, or even years of quiet observation. And when they finally pull away, they do so with complete certainty. For them, there's no need to explain or justify because in their mind, they've already connected the dots. The harsh truth is that by the time an INFJ walks away, they've seen more than you realize. Their silence wasn't indifference, it was evidence gathering. And when their decision comes, it's final. The buildup of silent resentment. When people think of resentment, they usually picture loud arguments, accusations, or visible anger. But for INFJs, resentment doesn't explode. It accumulates quietly, layer by layer, until it becomes unbearable. This is one of the most misunderstood aspects of their personality. On the outside, they may still appear calm, polite, and even caring, but beneath that surface, their heart is slowly hardening. An INFJ's empathy often makes them tolerate small slights that others might immediately confront. They give people the benefit of the doubt, they excuse bad behavior, and they tell themselves maybe they didn't mean it. But each dismissal adds to an invisible emotional tally. When someone repeatedly dismisses their feelings, crosses their boundaries, or takes their kindness for granted, the INFJ doesn't usually fight back right away. Instead, they withdraw a little, then a little more, and before anyone realizes it, what was once warmth and openness has been replaced by quiet walls. The danger here is that outsiders rarely notice this buildup. They mistake the INFJ's silence for forgiveness, when in truth it's simply containment. Every unspoken frustration, every unresolved disappointment, and every ignored need is being stored away. And because INFJs are deep feelers, that storage space fills up quickly. What others might brush off, they absorb, and it leaves a mark. By the time the INFJ finally reaches their breaking point, the resentment has been silently brewing for so long that there is no room left for repair. This is why their withdrawal often feels so sudden to others. It wasn't sudden at all, it was the result of a long, invisible process that no one else noticed. Silent resentment is their way of self-preservation. Instead of fighting battles daily, they internalize the conflict until the weight forces them to take the only step that feels safe, disappearing. And when they walk away, they don't look back, because in their mind, they've already been leaving in pieces for a long time. The brutal truth is this: if you notice an INFJ becoming quieter, less expressive, and more distant, you may already be witnessing the buildup of silent resentment. And once it reaches its peak, there is no return. Their deep loyalty has limits. INFJs are often described as fiercely loyal, the kind of people who will stand by you long after others have walked away. And that's true, but only up to a point. Their loyalty isn't blind, and it isn't infinite. It's deeply conditional, built on mutual respect, trust, and authenticity. Once those foundations start to crumble, their devotion begins to fade, no matter how much they once cared. The truth is, INFJs don't give their loyalty easily in the first place. They're naturally selective about who they let into their inner circle, often taking months or years before fully trusting someone. But once that trust is established, they'll defend and support you with a dedication that feels rare and unshakable. This is why people often mistake their loyalty for permanence, assuming that no matter what they do, the INFJ will always be there. That assumption couldn't be more wrong. When an INFJ realizes their loyalty is being abused, whether through lies, betrayal, neglect, or manipulation, something inside them shifts. They may not lash out or make a scene, but their heart starts to pull away. You'll see it in subtle ways: fewer shared thoughts, shorter conversations, a growing emotional distance. They're still present, but not fully invested. That quiet detachment is the INFJ's way of protecting themselves before the bond shatters completely. What makes this so painful for others is that by the time the INFJ finally walks away, they've already given chance after chance in silence. They've forgiven, overlooked, and endured more than most would. But once they hit that internal limit, their loyalty transforms into finality. When they decide the trust can't be rebuilt, they don't announce it with anger, they simply disappear, often leaving the other person stunned and confused. This is why INFJ loyalty is so powerful, but also so fragile. It can feel like the most dependable thing in the world, but it comes with an unspoken condition. It must be reciprocated. Cross that invisible line too many times, and the INFJ will remind you in the most unforgettable way that their loyalty has limits. Withdrawal over confrontation. INFJs are not built for constant conflict. They feel emotions too deeply to waste them in endless arguments, and they understand human behavior well enough to know when words won't change a thing. That's why when they're deeply hurt or pushed past their limit, their instinct isn't to fight, it's to withdraw. On the surface, this can seem confusing or even cold. Instead of shouting, slamming doors, or engaging in long explanations, they simply step back. They stop responding, stop showing up, stop investing their emotional energy. To the outside world, it may look like avoidance, but to the INFJ, it's an act of survival. Confrontation drains them, while withdrawal gives them space to protect their heart and clarity to decide their next move. The silent exit isn't about cowardice, it's about strategy. INFJs know that when emotions run high, people rarely listen. They just defend themselves. Rather than waste breath trying to be understood in a heated moment, INFJs choose to preserve their peace. Their withdrawal becomes a statement louder than words: I won't fight for this anymore, because it's already broken. What makes their withdrawal so powerful is the finality behind it. Unlike others who storm off but come back later, when an INFJ withdraws fully, it's usually the beginning of the end. They've already played the scenarios in their mind, weighed the relationship, and realized the emotional cost outweighs the benefit. By the time they disappear, they've accepted the loss, often long before the other person even realizes it. For those on the receiving end, the sudden silence can feel brutal. One moment, the INFJ was present, caring, and giving. The next, they're gone. Not in anger, but in a quiet, almost surgical detachment. That lack of confrontation leaves people desperate for answers, but answers rarely come. INFJs don't see the need to explain what should already be obvious. In the end, withdrawal is the INFJ's ultimate act of power. It spares them from destructive cycles and forces others to face the emptiness left behind. By walking away quietly, they protect their soul while delivering a message stronger than any argument could. Sometimes silence speaks the harshest truth. Protecting their energy at all costs. For INFJs, energy isn't just about physical stamina, it's emotional and spiritual fuel. Because they absorb so much from the people and environments around them, their energy is constantly at risk of being drained. That's why when relationships turn toxic or one-sided, they don't just pull back for comfort, they pull back for survival. To outsiders, this may seem harsh. An INFJ suddenly distancing themselves, canceling plans, or withdrawing from conversations can look like rejection. But in reality, it's an act of self-preservation. They've likely spent weeks, months, or even years pouring into others, trying to help, fix, or heal. At some point, though, they hit a wall. When their internal reserves run dry, they know they can't continue, and protecting their energy becomes non-negotiable. This protection often comes in subtle ways at first. Shorter responses, guarded conversations, or spending more time alone. But if the emotional strain continues, the INFJ will take stronger measures. They may disappear completely, not because they stopped caring, but because they cared too much for too long. Their compassion has limits, and once crossed, they must choose themselves over others. What makes this behavior so difficult for people to accept is that INFJs rarely give warnings. They don't explain in detail why they're pulling back because they expect others to notice the signs. When those signs are ignored, they protect themselves the only way they know how, by shutting off access to their emotional world. And here's the truth. When an INFJ protects their energy, it's never temporary. They might forgive, but they won't forget. They might return, but not in the same way. The bond has been altered because their trust in the emotional balance has been broken. Protecting their energy doesn't make INFJs selfish, it makes them wise. They understand that constantly giving without replenishment leads to burnout, resentment, and even illness. So instead of sacrificing themselves endlessly, they choose to walk away, even if it hurts. In the end, this boundary is what allows them to stay strong. Their empathy is powerful, but only when it's protected. By prioritizing their own energy, INFJs ensure that when they do give, it comes from a place of strength, not exhaustion. Closure isn't for them, it's for you. When an INFJ walks away, the people left behind often demand explanations. They want answers, clarity, and sometimes even apologies. But here's the truth. INFJs don't need closure in the way most people do. They've already processed the relationship in silence, replayed every detail, and made peace with their decision long before they disappeared. By the time they cut ties, closure is no longer for them, it's for the other person. INFJs are internal processors. That means when something goes wrong, they don't broadcast it, they turn inward. They analyze, overthink, and weigh the situation from every angle. They feel the pain long before you even realize it exists. By the time you notice their withdrawal, they've likely already mourned the loss of the connection. So when the other person comes looking for closure, INFJs often remain silent, not out of cruelty, but because they've already closed the chapter internally. To outsiders, this can feel brutal. The sudden silence, the lack of explanation, the refusal to argue or clarify, it leaves people with unanswered questions and lingering guilt. But that's part of the INFJ's way of protecting themselves. They know that explaining everything would only reopen wounds and invite more manipulation or guilt tripping. For them, closure isn't found in long conversations or drawn-out confrontations. It's found in peace, distance, and the decision to move forward without looking back. What makes this even harder for others is that INFJs rarely leave breadcrumbs. They don't usually lash out, give ultimatums, or warn that they're leaving. Instead, they quietly observe patterns, endure more than they should, and then, once their inner line has been crossed, they shut the door. No dramatic scene, no big announcement, just silence. And because they don't return for explanations, the other person is left with nothing but their own reflection to face. In the end, INFJs teach a harsh lesson through this approach. Closure is not something someone else can give you. It's something you create for yourself. By refusing to hand over explanations, INFJs force others to confront their actions, sit with discomfort, and find their own answers. For the INFJ, silence is the closure. walking away as transformation. For INFJs, walking away is never just an ending. It's a profound transformation. What looks like silent withdrawal on the outside is often the beginning of a powerful inner rebirth. When an INFJ reaches the point where they can no longer tolerate toxicity, betrayal, or emotional exhaustion, leaving isn't only about protecting themselves, it's about creating space for who they are meant to become. INFJs are naturally loyal and deeply invested in their connections, often giving far more than they receive. But this very trait can trap them in cycles of overgiving, self-sacrifice, and silent suffering. Walking away, then, becomes an act of liberation. It's the moment they reclaim their energy, their worth, and their ability to grow without being weighed down by unhealthy attachments. Instead of being defined by the pain, they use it as fuel to transform into a stronger, wiser, and more grounded version of themselves. The transformation happens quietly. While others may see the INFJ's silence as coldness, in reality, it's a period of healing and reinvention. They reflect deeply on what went wrong, what patterns they ignored, and what lessons they can take forward. This self-reflection becomes a blueprint for change. When they emerge from the silence, they often surprise others with their clarity, boundaries, and newfound strength. What makes this transformation so powerful is that INFJs rarely look back. Once they walk away, they don't return to the same dynamics that hurt them. Instead, they elevate. They invest in meaningful projects, nurture healthier relationships, and cultivate inner peace. To those left behind, it may seem like the INFJ vanished, but in truth, they've simply stepped into a new chapter where their energy is protected and their growth prioritized. This is why walking away is not just survival for INFJs, it's evolution. Every time they let go, they shed an old version of themselves and step closer to their authentic core. It's painful, yes, but it's also the process that forges their resilience and wisdom. And for those who underestimated them, this transformation often feels shocking, because while they thought they broke the INFJ, all they really did was awaken their strength. Why they never look back. When an INFJ decides to walk away, it is rarely impulsive. By the time they reach that point, they've already endured silent disappointments, repeated betrayals, or emotional exhaustion far longer than most people would tolerate. They've observed, reflected, and given more chances than anyone else realized. So when they finally shut the door, it isn't a temporary break, it's a permanent decision. INFJs are not wired to end connections lightly. Their deep loyalty and natural empathy keep them invested, often to their own detriment. But once they see a pattern that proves someone is unwilling to respect their boundaries, value their loyalty, or honor their trust, something inside them shifts. The same qualities that kept them patient, their endurance and compassion, now harden into resolve. They understand that reopening the door would only invite the same cycle of pain, and INFJs refuse to repeat lessons they've already learned. This is why people are often shocked when an INFJ never looks back. To outsiders, it may seem sudden. To the INFJ, it's the natural conclusion of a long internal process. They've already grieved the relationship while they were still in it. They've quietly detached piece by piece until the final goodbye feels inevitable. By the time they walk away, their emotional investment is gone, and with it, the possibility of return. What makes this so final is the INFJ's need for growth. Looking back would mean stagnation, reopening old wounds, and betraying their own progress. Instead, they channel their energy into transformation, building stronger versions of themselves from the ashes of what they left behind. This ability to cut ties permanently isn't about cruelty, it's about survival. INFJs know their sensitivity is both their gift and their vulnerability. So, when they protect it, they do so with absolute certainty. For those left behind, the silence can feel unbearable. They may wait for a message, an explanation, or a second chance, but INFJs rarely return. Once the door is closed, it stays locked. Because when they choose themselves over the pain, there's no reason to revisit what broke them in the first place. That's why INFJs never look back. Their future is always brighter than what they left behind. When an INFJ walks away, it isn't about punishment, cruelty, or revenge. It's about self-preservation. They've carried more than most people realize, and when their silence finally speaks, it's the loudest message of all: enough is enough. If you've ever had an INFJ in your life, you know their loyalty runs deep, their love runs pure, and their patience stretches further than it should. But once they're gone, they rarely return because they've chosen growth over pain, peace over conflict, and the future over the past. That's the true power of an INFJ's disappearance. So here's my question for you. Have you ever experienced an INFJ walking away from your life? Or have you been the INFJ who had to leave? Share your story in the comments because I'd love to hear your perspective. And if this video gave you clarity about INFJs, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on the notification bell because more deep dives into INFJ psychology are coming your way.